The 411 Live.
Where you can learn about issues that impact us every day. State of world, 411 Live.
Real people, real talk.
Made to help people in our community in every way. For your girl, 411 Live.
Unable to say goodbye in person. Unable to gather at a funeral service. Unable to easily find that final resting place for your loved ones. This is changing the way people grieve. And this is because of the coronavirus. Hello, I'm Beverly Taylor, and this is the 411 Live, real people, real talk. Today we are talking about the coronavirus and the final goodbye. I have two special guests with me today. First of all, I have Troy Robertson. He's the owner of Northwest Funeral Home. And I also have Chandra Staples, and her brother died from coronavirus. Chandra, first of all, let me say again that I'm very sorry for your loss.
Well, thank you.
Let's talk about this because, we've been talking so much about the coronavirus, COVID-19. This is one of those areas that people are experiencing, and we don't talk a whole lot about it. First of all, let's get into now, Troy, I'm going to come to you because I know with the funeral business, things are changing. You are doing things differently than what you used to do. But I want to start with you, Chandra, because I want to know about your brother's death. His name was Leon, right?
Yes, his name is Leon Staples Jr. He, by right, was named after my dad, Leon Staples Sr. Mm-hmm. He was a resident of Stone Mountain, Georgia. And actually, he would have been there 20 years, I want to say this September. Mm-hmm. And my brother worked for Grady Hospital Systems in Georgia, where he had been there. Actually, he would have been celebrating his 6th anniversary at work. He was well loved, and I mean that from my heart, even though he and I fought like cats and dogs as siblings.
As siblings, right.
As siblings, he was a good person, and he was well loved. So many people didn't believe that he passed away, but it's unfortunate. He died of the coronavirus, and basically what happened was someone came into his office sick. He was a human resource representative / manager, and someone came into his office very sick with a fever. That is how he got sick, which it started with a respiratory, which they basically stated that he did have pneumonia. He was given an asthma pump. Is it albuterol, something of that effect?
Okay.
And then he was at home and he thought he was just tired from being sick. He was tired because he had the virus.
And he had not been diagnosed, right?
No, he had not been diagnosed. Mm-hmm. And that's the sad part. You work for a hospital. You work with individuals that are working with the sick. And the sad part is we had to find out after the autopsy was complete. So he died by himself. He died at home.
Right.
Because he was found to be unresponsive. And the thing is, you're helping the sick and you're at a hospital. By right, why didn't someone say, hey, Leon, let's check you to see what's really going on?
Right.
But as I always say, when you take care of the sick, or when the sick is or the caregivers are taking care of the sick, who's going to take care of them? And in this case, my brother was in human resources where all types of germs probably come through daily.
Right.
So it's just, it's still a shock.
I'm sure it is.
It really is. It's still a shock.
And you, basically your brother died alone.
And so many people like my brother are dying by themselves. We couldn't say goodbye. We had to find out over the phone that he died.
Right.
And the hospital would not, I repeat, they would not give my dad or my mom any information, none. And I'm like, well, why didn't you have me call? He was like, we're going to do you the same way.
Right. And I'm assuming that's HIPAA rules or?
Well, I'm trust me, I understand about the HIPAA rules. I get it.
Yeah.
But they wouldn't give us any information. None. My parents, I'm a sibling, but the parents, nothing.
Right.
So it was terrible.
So this was what, one of those check calls that somebody, sent the police to check on your brother?
Well, what happened, the police did go to my brother's house and he didn't open the door. So they kicked the door in.
Okay.
And he was found unresponsive. So maybe there was a heartbeat, maybe there was something, but then he got to the hospital and that was it.
Wow. And with coronavirus, when it first came out, it was all about the folks who are in their 70s and 80s.
No, that's not true.
Your brother was young.
40. He just made 40 October 23rd. And this is a very serious disease. If you don't want to see Troy, stay home. I can say that proudly. And you won't know if you see Troy, not being funny. You won't know if you're going to see him because you'll be dead. But it's sad that our so-called president didn't take this seriously. And I didn't vote for him, so I can say this. He did not take this seriously. He was, how do I say it? Uneducated. He's already somewhat uneducated already, but he wasn't educated to the fact to where you look what's happened. Yeah. Look how bad it's gotten. And then you want to open up the country.
And then in Milwaukee, we are dealing with the fact that of the people in Milwaukee County, of the people who have died from the coronavirus, the majority are African Americans.
And it's not just about zip codes.
No.
People are not clean. People are not following directions. People are gross. I can say that because I work currently as a caregiver. People are gross. People are taking this as a joke, and it's not a joke. It's reality. No. It's serious.
And we're talking about people dying. People are dying, and no one knows that.
Dying.
No one knows that more than Troy Robertson, right, Troy?
Yes.
You are experienced an explosion, basically, of bodies coming into your facility, as well as other funeral homes across the city. Is that correct to say?
Right. I talked to a lot of funeral directors, and they all agree that there's a large number of people coming in to our and receiving our services from this outbreak. Yes.
Yeah. And so we see the numbers that are attributed to coronavirus as far as the deaths. But we don't know, some of these other bodies that you are getting, they may be because of the disease as well, but these people have not been tested. So we don't know.
Right. And we have to treat everyone as if they have the virus.
Right.
So we take all the precautions that and use the proper equipment when we're picking up the loved ones and treating the loved ones. Yes.
Well, let's talk about that because, we had all of the news about folks not having enough of that protective gear, that personal protective equipment. You guys need that as well. So are you having to reuse or what?
Yes, I think we're the forgotten segment of the frontline workers. We spend a lot of time thinking about the medical side of treating this virus, but on the back end, we have families also, and we have to go get people loved ones. And one of our concerns are that we're not given the proper equipment in order to do our jobs. So it's kind of difficult. We're getting some help from the city of Milwaukee. Milwaukee County, pardon me. Mm-hmm. And as far as PPE, but we do not have enough.
So do you have to go? I mean, are you dressing kind of like the hazmat people with the stuff all over your body?
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, yes. We have face masks, a regular mask,
Mm-hmm.
and we have gowns on. Yes, as well as gloves, of
Right.
course.
Gotta have the gloves. Gotta have the gloves.
Yes,
So
yes,
how are you dealing? So the body, you get the call, you go out, you get the body. So you guys are suited up at that point just to retrieve the body, right?
right,
Um,
right.
and then you get it. It doesn't go right into the Do you have another building or a facility?
At our locations, we have a morgue. We have a separate location where we prepare the bodies. A lot of funeral homes, they don't have that luxury, so to speak. So everything is done in a central location. We are able to embalm and prepare the bodies for service for funerals in a different location, but still, our workers have to be prepared and dressed with the proper PPEs to embalm
Right.
and prepare people, loved ones. Yes.
Right. And this may be a dumb question, but I'm curious. When a person dies from coronavirus, is that virus, can that body infect someone, or do we know?
Sure. There's been some studies that and that that the virus been passed on, a dead body passed on the virus to a funeral worker. So I mean, it's documented that has happened.
Wow.
But we treat the person as if they had tuberculosis or Hep C. So we take all the precautions that we need to take in order to minimize our exposure.
Can you cremate? Is
Yes,
that permissible?
We have a retort, so we have a crematory at our location, and we can cremate. Yes, and that's fine. But a lot of families are still electing to have services, and the services have changed. We used to have a full-fledged funeral service, but because of the state law, we're able to only allow 10 people at a time in. So we are mostly having visitations, like a walkthrough.
Yeah.
10 in, 10 out, 10 in, 10 out.
We're going to talk more about that with Chandra because her brother's body, Leon, was brought from Georgia to Milwaukee to be funeralized here and taken to Northwest Funeral Chapel. Correct?
He was flown here. Yes.
He was flown here.
Okay. Because my brother was a college football player, we thought that Northwest was going to have to go and drive to pick him up, because the airlines have a weight requirement. But fortunately, one of the airlines was able to, I think it was Delta Airlines, shout out to them. They were able to fly him here.
Awesome.
That is great.
Yes.
That is great.
Yeah.
We're going to get more into the funeral service in a minute after our break. But one thing I wanted to mention before the break, Troy, with funeral homes, and I remember that my brother-in-law died, and we went to Northwest Funeral Chapel, and you guys were so good. And I was very impressed at how empathetic, compassionate, all of those things. That's what you guys do. I'm sure that you're shaking hands, you give a hug where it's needed, got the shoulder for folks to cry on. This is a different day. You're not shaking hands anymore and, hugging people anymore. So that must do something to you as well, because you are in the business and you have focused on helping the loved ones. But now
Right.
there's just so much you can do, right?
Right. Personally, it's affected me because I'm a hugger, right? It's coming from a guy, but it's the truth, um, and to not be able to touch and to reach out and hold a hand is kind of difficult. And you see the families that are longing for that. They are, even amongst themselves, family members, they're not doing it. And it's so difficult, they're telling you to stay 6 feet apart. I mean, it's impossible.
Yeah.
It's impossible. You have the families really, they're in such a condition where they're crying out for touch.
Right.
They're crying out for understanding and empathy and sympathy. And you're unable to do it because of the times that we're living in.
Right.
Yes. It's difficult.
Yeah,
it's difficult.
I can tell.
And the hugging part, let me tell you, I got it from my wife. It's touch, feel, So, but yes, it's difficult.
Yeah. Okay. We're going to take a break. We're going to come back. We're talking about the coronavirus and the final goodbye. Stay with us.
Human trafficking is a global issue that is happening locally. This is a problem that we cannot ignore.
Being so scared on that hotel bed and wish I had my mommy. Going back into that feeling of, man, what am I getting myself into?
She rests her head on the prison to which she's chained.
I'm standing there and I can't move. I can't go nowhere, I'm stuck.
Drug into this spider's web, and she can't untangle herself to freedom.
Him telling me how pretty I am and what I can do to trick guys out of money and what I need to do and how much money I need to bring back, and him making me change into different lingeries to take pictures of me to put me on Craigslist. Now I'm a product to be sold.
Beneath this ground we walk is a hell of movement in a forced direction. Gridlocked, traffic lights, sex, currency, bodies, stock, fear, monopolized, auction, blocks.
Another John, he come another one, and just being sold over and over and over and over.
Minds groomed to be immune to pain.
And you used to it, and you just lay there.
Numb, desensitized, innocence, drained.
I went from that scared little girl, from the foster care, from being molested by my stepbrother, by my foster brother, till being a lonely little girl stuck in a house, so scared with my mother, to being trafficked.
And welcome back to the 411 Live, Real People, Real Talk, where we are talking about the coronavirus and the final goodbye. Chandra Staples joins us, and her brother actually died from the coronavirus. And Troy Robertson is here, and he's the owner of Northwest Funeral Chapel, where they are dealing with a lot of funerals because of this virus. Let me go back to what we kind of started on. We touched on it, and let's just dive into it. This whole thing of, okay, like Chandra, your brother back in Milwaukee, now you go to Northwest, and we're going to do this funeral. That whole coming up with how to make this work. Were you kind of the spearheader of this, kind of leading the family in this?
Yes, I kind of had some intense conversations with my parents. They're both retired. And this is something they've never, ever dealt with. I had a sister that passed away. But at that time, of course, we weren't dealing with anything like this. And the fact of the matter is, of course, the last time we know we had something big like this was 1918. None of us were born, of course, at that time, and things were very different then. However, this was one of those things where you have to say, okay, as Troy explained to us, there can be 10 people in the chapel. So we had to figure out who's going to be in the chapel. And some of the people that we invited to be a part of that, they took it so hard. Some of them just said, we'll just come view and leave. Mm-hmm. And as I kind of mentioned in our previous conversation, I felt like that we were being rushed to grieve. I kind of felt that way. And it's not just me, it's a lot of people who are dealing with this in particular. Like we're on Zoom right now, and I had a childhood friend who had to say goodbye to her dad on Zoom. And when I read that, it just broke my heart. And I cried because I couldn't even say goodbye.
Yeah, that's true.
There was no goodbyes. And the fact I know that Northwest Funeral Home wants to stay open, so they're going to follow the rules of the state. I totally respect that. But it's so sad that 2 hours, in my heart, 2 hours was not long enough. I mean, you had a lot of people that came with masks on. Troy is a witness to that. He had one on himself. That particular day, I just said, look, I'm not putting on a mask. I can't breathe as it is. I'm fat. I'm not putting on a mask today. And I say that jokingly because it's like we're being smothered, but yet distant. And I say that jokingly, but there's a lot of people that are offended that they're being rushed. And this is not Troy. This is, the state of Wisconsin. I respect our governor. I really do, because he wants us all to stay well. He wants us to stay home. And a lot of people did stay home. A lot of people didn't come. I'm sure if this ban was lifted, Troy would have had a swinging door. It'd have been probably 200 to 300 people there. But because of what it is,
right. So when you talk about the 10 people, and Troy, you can jump in here too. So when you say, okay, 10 people, you mean 10 people at one time, right?
Right.
So,
right.
5 can trickle out and 5 new ones can trickle in. So it's moving like that.
Right.
But then you get the 5 who want to stay there for the entire time, or the 7 who want to stay there. So, and then you got to, who's going to tell them that there are some other people out here who would like to come in, but they need to come out so that these others can't. I mean, do you run into that as well?
Yes. You run into
hard.
That. And it's something that I don't tell the family, you have to leave. Other family members have to do that job, because who am I to say, a son can't stay in there. He's been there 20 minutes already.
Yeah.
And there's some people standing outside waiting to get in. So I leave that up to the family to do. An option that we have, a lot of families have spoke to us about that. After this blows over, they plan to have memorial service at a different time and a different day. And they can get all the family together, and we can celebrate the life of their loved ones appropriately.
Yeah.
And then even go eat afterwards, have a repast. But right now, we're unable to do that because of the rules that are in place.
Yeah. And I guess you kind of feel a little standoffish too, because, you're supposed to be 6 feet away from people. So these people are coming in and you need to stand back because you need to protect yourself. You have a family. You don't want to bring it to your family. So that
I know the Staples family is tough. I know the Staples family. So I wanted to hug everybody, I wanted to squeeze everybody, but I couldn't do it, I couldn't do it. And so that's difficult. for us also, even the staff. And it's kind of hard to tell a family member, wait, we have 10 already. And they see their loved one crying over here and they want to come in and give a hug. And they're not supposed to do it. So that's what we're faced with.
And if I could say this, the other thing is I mistakenly hugged somebody. Received a text message that no touching. And I was like, it's just one of those things, Troy. It's out of habit. And it's one of those things, it's like, man, I mean, this is worse than going to visit somebody in prison, and which I've never, ever done in my life. But those that have can agree with me that they have a no touching when you go visit people in prison. And so I feel like, again, we were being rushed to grieve in 1 day, in 2 hours. But we have to follow the rules. And Troy and his staff were only doing their job. I know some people were offended.
Sure.
I've talked to so many people that are offended by the rules. And Troy has shared some stories, which I won't dare repeat, that are funny. But I mean, they are, and I think the C knows the story I'm talking about. They're funny, but they're not funny because it's reality. It really is. And it's one of those things to where it's like, if I don't do this, I could get sick.
Right. So Troy,
and that's the thing,
Yeah, Troy, are you keeping it down to 2 hours? Is that kind of your standard now? And if this continues and it gets worse, you might have to make it 1 hour because you have so many services that you have to do?
I hope not. We're using 2-hour blocks because people are going to the cemetery and some of the same people, we might have 4 families that want to have a service on 1 day, or 3 families that want to have a service on 1 day. And the cemetery has a cutoff time when all the families have to be at the cemetery. So we had to be able to accommodate the family, walk that fine line, accommodate the family, and make sure that their loved ones buried the same day that we have the service.
Right.
So just for instance, if we decide, we're going to have a 4-hour service, right? Well, we might be able to do 1 a day at a 4-hour, So we're already backlogged as far as getting people time for services, and it would just, if we make it longer, we'll run into problems.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
And the cemetery, let me say this, Graceland Cemetery was beyond kind to our family. I mean that from my heart. But some of the cemeteries, I won't name who, some of them are very strict. They will only allow 10 cars into the cemetery. Graceland didn't do that to us. I mean, and when they count 10 cars, it's like, that's it. I've had people cry, devastated. And again, I go back to saying this was the grieving process. Some people want to stand there and watch the whole thing, which cemeteries no longer do that. You got to go, and that's that, before they put the body away. And it's just so sad when I was told they will count 10 cars.
Wow.
Yeah, and some are 10 people, period.
Yes.
Wow.
So, she's saying 10 cars, but there's some cemeteries that will only allow 10 people.
10 people. Yes.
So it's pretty.
Yeah.
It's pretty hard.
How do you pick and choose?
Yeah, I understand, right?
Yeah. Let me just, because we're almost out of time, but I want to make sure we get to the part about the whole streaming thing, because that is something, Chandra, that you decided to do. And Troy, I guess that is becoming the norm for these funeral services now.
Yes.
So, Chandra, This just popped in your head? I mean, it's a good idea, but
some of my relatives, my annoying relatives, thought it would be a great idea. And I had already had that in the back of my head, seeing that I'm no stranger to a microphone or a TV camera. I thought it would be wise that, all of our relatives would be able to see this. And I'm grateful for LaShondra Scott for coming, and assisting in this process. And I thank Troy for allowing her to do that. And if I am correct, we had over 600 people view that were live. And it was just like, so many people had texted me and said how grateful everything was done professionally. Everything was neat and nice. And it's sad that it had to be a funeral. But even some people told me it's hard to grieve streaming. It's like you sit through this because you have to. There's no other choice. But so many people felt like we were being rushed. Yeah. But
it's different.
We're grateful for technology and all its enhancements, but it's just one of those things. It is what it is right now.
Yeah.
I mean, I've watched so many things on YouTube and online, and now my brother, his service is online. I would have rather seen him chase a football, but we are in these times right now.
Right. So Troy, are you seeing a lot of families going with the streaming?
We're seeing more. Yes. You're asking a lot for someone to come in from Tennessee or Mississippi for a service, and they can't spend any time with their loved one. You're asking a lot. You really are. So the streamers step in and allow them to see the service that's going on. And once again, a lot of families have elected to set up at a later date a memorial service when they can get all their loved ones under one roof, where they can sit there and celebrate their life.
So at this point, are most families doing what they call the funeral service is more like a visitation where people just...
More like a visitation.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's exactly it.
Yeah.
That's exactly it. It's pretty much a walkthrough to come in and see their loved one. We're not having ministers preach because and conduct a eulogy, because are you going to pick the 10 people to sit in for the eulogy?
Right.
That's the tough part.
Right.
I mean, how can you tell someone that's crying and grieving a family member, oh, you're one of the 10, you made the cutoff, but your sister or another cousin or aunt didn't? It's kind of difficult. So,
and what was and Troy, let me say this was very hard for me because I have never been to a service where there was not a eulogy. And, I was just like, wow, this is going to be very interesting. And again, so many people thought it was an honor to stream, but that's where you go back to okay, who's going to be one of the 10 people? And then if you leave somebody out, people get very offended.
Yeah. This is an emotional time. Yeah.
Well, I'm so glad I did not make that decision. I asked my parents, who you guys picking? Because I want to see somebody go after them. Because but it's just one of those things, like I said, the grieving process, again, there's no time limit to grieving. But when you're preparing, when you're burying and preparing all this, so many people were, again, grateful for the streaming, but 2 hours is, Troy, this, it's not long enough.
No, it's not enough.
Yeah. Chandra, do you think that you guys will have like a memorial, something after this?
We actually will have a memorial service. I not only, as I mentioned, my mom's youngest sister transitioned that Thursday because my brother died that Friday. So that following Thursday, my aunt died. So
From
they had
from
from coronavirus in Michigan. So not only did she pass away, 2 of my church members passed from the virus as well. So we have to do a memorial service in Georgia for my brother. So it's not over yet.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, he's buried, but it's not over for us yet. And it's just like I said, it's good that we can have these services. Don't get me wrong, but as I explain to people, we have to follow the guidelines of the state of Wisconsin, and we have to keep in mind that people are still getting sick. People are really dying. Troy, I'm sure if you had a number, I mean, I'm sure your numbers have exceeded the normal numbers. Am I saying that correctly?
Yes.
It's just people need to be mindful of this disease, this pandemic.
Take it seriously.
And when they came on and said this is a pandemic, I'm like, this is really serious.
Serious. Yes.
It is.
I mean, to hear from you hearing you, because I got kind of close to my brother with a mask on and not thinking, okay, I can get something too. But as I said to you the other day, Beverly, I'm not going to die during this pandemic. I'm going to live. My brother didn't plan on dying on March 20th. I'm sure he had a lot of plans to live, but it is unfortunate. And I can say this without crying. It's unfortunate that someone came in his office and he got sick.
Yeah.
But the goal is for us to be obedient to the rules. I can't say it enough. And if you don't want to see Troy, stay home.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't know if you're going to see Troy, but stay home. That's all I can say.
Right.
I'm so serious.
Right. We have to take the precautions, not only to protect ourselves and save our lives, but to save the lives of
Others, yes.
Troy Robertson, owner of Northwest Funeral Chapel. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. I appreciate what you do. Please stay safe. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Chandra, thank you for joining us. Chandra Staples. She mentioned that she was very familiar with the microphone because she used to work at 1290. So thank you for sharing your story. And I'm sure talking about this at times it was painful for you, talking about your brother's death. And I did it
without crying. So thank you, Lord, that, I'm not crying. I'm grateful that I'm able to talk about it with people that are listening.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing your story. And thank you for joining us and watching this edition of the 411 Live. We are a nonprofit organization. Go to our website, 411live.org, if you would like to support us. Normally, we focus on sex trafficking, human trafficking, specifically sex trafficking, spreading the awareness and getting the conversation started or getting the ball rolling, keeping the conversation going. But because of the coronavirus, which has risen, to the top, we're focusing on that. So we hope that you enjoyed this episode. If you would like to see previous episodes, go to the podcast platforms of your choice. You will find us there. You can also find us on YouTube. If you go there, please subscribe. And also Apple Podcasts. For now, I'm Beverly Taylor. This is the 411 Live. Real people, real talk.